We have shocking news about the Apple iPhone 14 series, and that's coming up right after this. So today we've got plenty more to share about the Apple iPhone 14 series, including some shocking news that may disappoint a lot of you. Before we get started though, like the video if you're an Apple fan, and let me know in the comments what your most wanted iPhone 14 feature is, and if you haven't already then hit subscribe now so you don't miss a thing in the future. So the first story of the day, before we get into the iPhone 14, is actually about the new foldable device from Apple. A new report from The Elect tells us that Apple are working with LG to develop a new ultra-thin cover glass, and this is going to be used in a foldable iPad and a foldable MacBook. According to the report, LG are already working on a huge 17-inch foldable OLED panel, and this is going to be an 11-inch display when it's closed, and they're now going to be working with Apple to create more devices, and they're even exploring the possibility of a 20-inch foldable display. At this stage, however, they're simply working on the device and exploring the possibilities, and reliable analyst Ming-Chi Kuo previously told us that they'd be coming in 2024, but he's since revised his predictions. Ming-Chi Kuo tweeted to say that he now expects the devices to launch in 2025 at the very earliest, and that it's likely to be a foldable iPad or some form of hybrid of an iPhone and an iPad. Now next up, we had previous news that the iPhone 14 had entered the engineering validation testing, and this means that the specs should pretty much be confirmed. Plenty of information has been coming in since this, and for a start, Ming-Chi Kuo advises that there's not going to be a periscope camera in this year's iPhone. He says that Apple are working on them, but they won't be in the iPhone 14, and it's much more likely to be in the 2023 iPhone. Now he's also clarified the reasoning behind the thicker camera module on the iPhone 14 Pro models in a tweet that he sent last week. According to Ming-Chi Kuo, the reason that the total depth is a little bit thicker, and the reason that we're still going to be getting a camera bump, is that for the iPhone 14 Pro models they'll get an upgrade to a 48 megapixel primary camera. Now he says that the sensor being used is much larger than the predecessors, and this is the main reason the bump remains. Now next up, we've got news that many of you may not want to hear, and that's about the highly requested in-display Touch ID as well as the in-display Face ID. Now Ming-Chi Kuo has predicted many times that under-display Face ID is going to make its debut in the future, and yesterday he gives us a date. According to his tweet, the in-display Face ID is going to debut in 2024, and this is going to be for the iPhone 16, and of course this means it's not in the iPhone 14. He says that it's not actually a technical issue, and it's more of a marketing purpose, which seems relatively likely. Reliable display analyst Ross Young also replied to the tweet, and he says that under-display Face ID will be coming to the iPhone 16, but the under-display Touch ID will not. Apple have heavily marketed the Face ID and said that Touch ID isn't required, and even during the past couple of years where masks are causing issues, they had the perfect excuse to bring it back, but they didn't. So personally, I expect that we're not going to see it on an iPhone again. Now that being said, people have been managing fine with Face ID only, and iPhones have still been selling very well, so there's really no need for Apple to worry about bringing it back. With the iPhone 14 series currently undergoing the engineering validation testing, we'll probably start to get a lot more of the specific specs coming through now, and while the design hasn't been finalized yet, it's very likely that it will look like all of these renders. Of course, things can change until it's all finalized, but it's very unlikely to be anything major. For those excited about the iPhone 14 series though, we're now going to run through the full specs, design and the expected pricing for each model in the range. For my regular viewers, you guys have seen this, so just skip to the next video, but if you are new here then hit subscribe now and we'll get right into it. To start with, the new entry-level model is going to be the iPhone 14. With the iPhone 14, we get a 6.1-inch Super Retina OLED display. It's expected to be a 90Hz display with an 1170 by 2532 resolution, and this gives us 460 pixels per inch. On the front, we'll be getting a 12-megapixel selfie camera, but unlike the Pro models, we will have a notch instead of a punch-hole camera. On the rear, it's expected that they're going to stick with the dual camera setup, but it may be the first time we get a LiDAR scanner on the lower end models. The dual camera setup is going to consist of a wide angle and an ultra wide camera, and the phone is going to be powered by the new A16 Bionic, which is going to be a 4nm chipset that's both more powerful and efficient than the A15. It's going to be coming with 6GB of RAM and a choice of 128, 256 or 512 storage. The phone's going to be powered by a 3240 mAh battery with improved fast charging, likely to be something like 25 watts. It's expected to support both wireless and reverse wireless charging, and it's also expected to come with 5G, Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.2 and ultra-wideband support. It will of course ship with the new iOS 16. When it comes to pricing, Apple have been keeping things relatively the same lately, so we're expecting the base model to start from $799. Now next up, we've got the iPhone 14 Pro. With the iPhone 14 Pro, we get a 6.1-inch ProMotion OLED display. It's a 120Hz LTPO display with a resolution of 1170 by 2532, which gives us 440 pixels per inch. On the front, we get another 12-megapixel wide-angle camera with Face ID sensors embedded in the display. On the rear, we get a triple camera setup consisting of a 48-megapixel wide-angle as the primary, a 12-megapixel ultra-wide and a 12-megapixel telephoto, and of course, we get the additional LiDAR scanner. The phone is going to be powered by the A16 Bionic, and it's expected that it's going to come with a choice of 8GB of RAM, 128, 256, 512 and 1TB of storage. The phone's going to be powered by a 3240 mAh battery with improved fast charging, likely to be 25 watts. It's expected to support both wireless and reverse wireless charging, and it's also expected to come with 5G, Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.2 and ultra-wideband support. It's going to ship with iOS 16, and the base model of the iPhone 14 Pro is expected to launch from $999. Now next up, we've got the new edition, which is the iPhone 14 Max. The iPhone 14 Max is expected to come with a 6.7-inch Super Retina OLED display. It's expected to be a 90Hz display with a resolution of 1284 by 2778. On the front, we get a 12-megapixel selfie camera, and on this model, we also have a notch. And then on the rear, we get a 12-megapixel wide angle as the primary, a 12-megapixel ultra-wide and the LiDAR scanner. The phone's going to be powered by the new A16 Bionic, and it should be coming with 6GB of RAM and a choice of 128, 256 or 512 storage. The iPhone 14 Max is going to be powered by a 4352 mAh battery, again with fast charging likely to be 25 watts. It's expected to support both wireless and reverse wireless charging, and it's also going to come with 5G, Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.2 and ultra-wideband support. Of course, it's going to be shipping with iOS 16. When it comes to pricing, we expect the iPhone 14 Max to start from $899. Now finally, we've got the top-end model, the iPhone 14 Pro Max. The iPhone 14 Pro Max is coming with a 6.7-inch ProMotion OLED display. We're expecting a 120Hz LTPO display with a resolution of 1284 by 2778, giving us 458 pixels per inch. On the front, we get a 12-megapixel punch-hole selfie camera with Face ID under the display, and then on the rear, it's the triple camera setup and a LiDAR scanner. The triple camera consists of a 48-megapixel wide angle, a 12-megapixel ultra-wide and a 12-megapixel telephoto. The phone's going to be powered by the A16 Bionic, and it's expected that it's going to come with a choice of 8GB of RAM, 128, 256, 512 or 1TB storage. The phone's going to be powered by a 4352 mAh battery with improved fast charging, likely to be 25 watts, and again it's likely to support both wireless and reverse wireless charging. It's expected to come with 5G, Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.2 and ultra-wideband support, and it will of course ship with iOS 16. The base model of the iPhone 14 Pro Max is expected to launch from $1,099, and of course the higher storage options will cost more. So overall, the iPhone 14 is looking incredible, and it's great to finally see some drastic design changes. In terms of the hardware, they've already got a good setup going, so focusing on design is a good move. Of course, the iPhone 14 series is going to be launching in September 22, and as more and more leaks come in, I'll continue to share them as they do. As always though, I'd like to know your thoughts in the comments, so who out there is excited for the Apple iPhone 14, and what are your thoughts on Touch ID not coming back? But thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, smash a thumbs up. If you didn't, hit the thumbs down twice, and I'll see you guys in the next one.